突っ張って生きていくつもりなら他人の力なんて当てにするな。
少し遊びたくなった。
手丸逃げろ。
いいから早よ行け。
Let's tell you a little bit about Sword of the Stranger. So it's set in the Sengoku period of Japan, which, for anyone who doesn't know, that's the time in Japan's history where the country was pretty much in constant war with each other all the time. A young boy called Kotaro and his loyal pet dog Tobimaru escape from an army of Chinese warriors who raid a temple looking for him. Fleeing for the safety to a neighbouring temple, the pair take the long journey on foot, wary of anyone they bump into on the way, knowing really that in that time period, anybody they do bump into could be thieves or murderers, and they're probably better off not being trusted. This makes the boy incredibly suspicious of anyone. And I think you've got to understand when you watch this movie, you kind of think this guy's a jerk, this little kid, but you've got to understand where he's coming from. You know, everybody is basically a horrible person in this kind of era of Japan, and it's just best just to treat everybody as scum that it is to try and be tricked, and you know, who knows what else might happen to you. When he comes across a stranger on his journey, and he's a skilled warrior with a sword, but he has no name, which makes him, you know, even more suspicious that he doesn't have a name. After an ambush that threatens both the boy, the dog, and this sword warrior that he comes across, Kotaro, the little boy, makes a deal with the wandering warrior, hiring him to escort them to safety of the temple. But of course, the desire of the rich and powerful don't make the journey a simple one. The Chinese army's reason to capture the boy is a mystery, even to the Japanese soldiers that are housing them. So the Chinese have come over looking, and they're throwing gold around, and the Japanese are kind of like, well, okay, if you want to give me gold, I suppose you can have a little bit of land, and we'll leave you alone. But they're all suspicious of one another, and there's a lot of pride and distrust, superstition and greed. It gets the best of both the armies, as their dislike for one another does build as the movie goes on. But there is one Chinese warrior with yellow hair and blue eyes, as they describe him, which is the greatest swordsman of the Chinese, and he grows a bit restless with all the squabbles of the old men who are running the two armies, wanting nothing more but to test his skills with his sword. And throughout the movie, there is a tantalising build toward a confrontation with the swordsman with no name and this Chinese blonde warrior. So Sword of Stranger is a beautifully animated, and I think the most important thing about this movie is how they have animated all the additional scenes and frames of animation that they normally cut out of an anime. So a lot of these action animes, they tend to they tend to cut frames out with, you know, clever techniques from time to time to sort of reduce the amount of drawing their artists have to do. You know, we've all seen the animes where they scream at the screen for a long time to build up their strength, or when they're running, there's certain animations that they sort of do it from the chest up, and they sort of animate going up and down to simulate running. Sword of the Stranger doesn't do that. It's painstaking how much detail it goes into to all those extra frames of animation to really sort of draw how a human body moves and how the speed of things happen. And it's kind of mesmerising just to see all those extra frames of animation that you normally get cut out. It's really, really good, really good. However, the faint of heart, you may want to skip this one if you don't like gore, as a lot of that extra attention to detail to the smooth animation is also spent on the many gory deaths and grotesque murders that they do with swords, spears, and arrows. And what exactly that does to the human body. There's a fair amount of blood, and there's also a fair amount of loss of limb. So yeah, bear that in mind. Sword of the Stranger deals with subjects of loyalty and guilt, trust, friendship, and the beliefs and desires of men and women, as well as how fragile a life is when it's mixed up into the selfishness of war, where lives can just be snuffed out, and it doesn't lie about the fact that who was an important person could just be gone like that. All of it is wrapped up in a motivating soundtrack, and as previously mentioned before, the beauty of the animation is top notch throughout, and it all climaxes into one of the greatest hand-drawn fight scenes I've ever seen in animation. The battle that they're constantly building towards between the stranger with no name and the blonde Chinese sword fighter, it is incredible. It's just because they, like I said, they take every little bit of animation that people would normally not cheat on, but skip over, and they really go into detail into those difficult to draw kind of flurries. So yeah, so that's Sword of the Stranger. Let's go to the scorecard, the Animania board. Emily came for anime recommendations, stayed for plot with dog. You might want to try this one, Emily, because it is the dog is very cute in this, and it's not a small character either. It's quite a big character. However, if you're squirmish and you don't like gore, you might want to second guess it. Just saying. Just there's your warning. Left because squeamish. There you go. Yeah, like you said. Firestorm, got to admit these retro history animes are generally on my skip list. They can end up being a bit carbon copy of each other. Watching this and it looks like countless other samurai anime, I may struggle to tell them apart, but I guess that's just because it's a genre I don't really watch. True. I think that's a very valid point actually, Firestorm. I too have found that with a lot of these samurai ones, but there's something about Sword of the Stranger, and I think it's just because of the way it is animated and how kind of concise it is, and how it doesn't go into too much detail about Japanese history. It just gives you enough, and it gives you very. Sometimes the characters are difficult to sort of tell apart because they're all in samurai armor, and you've only got the little bit of the face to be able to tell them. These characters have very distinguishing features and characteristics, so you don't get lost in it. So maybe give it a go. It's not quite a historical telling by any stretch of the imagination, but it is, it is a concise story that might sort of go, okay, this is an exception to the rule you've just mentioned. Firestorm continues, I read the shonen manga but don't watch much shonen anime really for some reason. I think some people just prefer mangas over the animes. It's a fair point. Kizra, I don't mind gore in animation as a rule. Then I think you really like this one as well, Kizra, so that might be free for you to watch. You might have a busy weekend. Mistress Puff, this one is my favourite from the three. It's really dark, but it warms my heart too. So yeah, Sarah, my wife, she really enjoyed this one, and I think it was one of those ones I put on, and she was kind of like, really? And then as it went on, I think she kind of like stopped what she was doing, because I think she was reading or drawing or something, put that down and got really into this. Strange Game Society, I've seen plenty of gory anime, so I doubt this will bother me. I don't think it will bother you at all. I've got the impression you've seen a lot of anime in your time, and I don't think this one will bother you. Anyway, Sword of the Stranger, let's go to the scorecard. Like I said, it's a one-off movie. So again, the commitment is quite small. The pace is in between. It's not too fast. It's not too slow. There's plenty to talk about, but it never really sort of goes past anything too strenuous. And it gives you enough time to digest it. You can watch it once and that'll be it. You don't need to watch it again if you don't want to. You'll take it all in, but you will leave like you've seen something different and special. I feel. The animation again is outstanding because of the reasons I've mentioned. It's it depends what you like from your anime. Some people like more detail in their characters and things like that, but it really, on this one, I've rated this on the basis it comes down to the in-between frames that they normally cut out. Is just really fascinating when they're spinning the swords around and coming down with weapons that they haven't just sort of copied and pasted quick movements, that you actually see pretty much every spin of the blade, which is really cool. Voice acting is really good. They also do this cool thing, because there's the Chinese army and there's the Japanese army. They even put a card up the front to explain it, but the Chinese and the Japanese can't understand one another, so they mix between Chinese voiceovers, Japanese voiceovers, and they put subtitles in there to basically tell you that the Chinese are speaking and the Japanese can't understand them, and vice versa. But when the Chinese are on their own, they actually do speak in English. So yeah, it's an interesting sort of I don't know, I've never come across it before, but it was kind of interesting to sort of see that, and you can really see why the distrust is there as a result. And then finally the ending again, it does sort of end in a way where they could do more, and I don't think there is any more Sword of the Stranger that I could find. So again, it's not as if they tie it all up and that's it. I don't ever need to see anything from this again. But the ending is very satisfying, where there is no loose ends as such. It just sort of ends kind of the same way it begins with there's more adventures to come. It's one of those kind of endings, you know, where they ride off and they say, I wonder what's going to come next, kind of stuff. So you won't be upset with the ending. There's no cliffhangers here. Cool, so back to the chat. I did generally roll my eyes when he suggested watching it. You did, Sarah. But you then did love it and you think it's one of the best in you. So, for now, I seem to be past my anime days. Too many games in it. But none of these have been seen by me. For you, Bill, I'll give them a go. Thank you for that. And I think, like I said, the reason I rate these the way that I do is because of that reason. I play games more than I do necessarily watch anime. However, there we go. with these 5 factors in mind, if I know what I'm getting myself into, then I actually enjoy them more. You know, things like Bleach and Dragon Ball Z and that kind of thing. I've tried, and Naruto. I've tried to sit down and watch them, but there's just too much of a commitment to catch up, and there is a lot of filler that really annoys me, and I just can't help but feel I could be playing a video game rather than watching this filler episode that everyone keeps saying skip, and I don't want to keep going online and checking what I shouldn't skip and what I should skip and all that kind of stuff. I want to watch it as it was intended. But yeah, the 3 I've given you today, you could drop in, have a look, drop out, and still get back to your games, no problem.